You cannot bring forth the new life while you are still secretly feeding the old one. This is the first law of resurrection. This is the first sword of truth. This is the first flame that burns away illusion. Many people cry out for change, yet still cling with both hands to the worn-out image of who they used to be. They pray for a new door while sitting beside the grave of an old identity. They ask heaven for increase, love, peace, freedom, and divine right action, yet in their secret speech they still call themselves by the names of defeat. So I ask you plainly, with love and with spiritual authority, what are you still trying to keep alive that divine wisdom has already declared finished? The struggle you feel is not because you are weak. It is not because you are broken. It is not because you lack discipline, strength, faith, or holy desire. It is because you have become too closely identified with the old garment. You have been wearing delay as though it were your nature. You have been cloaked in shame as though shame were your name. You have worn the robe of one who believed love must be earned, acceptance must be chased, and supply must be wrestled from an unwilling world. But that robe has become grave clothes. And I say to you now, gently but firmly, you are not stuck. You are still answering to a name you were never meant to keep. There is a false identity that must be buried. It must be spoken dead. It must be surrendered so completely to truth that the lie has no doorway through which to return. There must be no more patching of old garments, no more pouring new wine into old vessels, no more repeating the decrees of defeat and then wondering why the same harvest appears. You cannot drag the story of your suffering into the sanctuary of your rising. The altar is ready. The tomb is ready. The Spirit of God is moving over the deep places of your consciousness, and it asks only this: will you let the old you die? Do not say you desire wealth while speaking as one who fears increase. Do not cry out for love while carrying the tone of rejection. Do not ask for peace while making war with yourself every morning. Do not pray for divine order and then bless disorder with your own mouth. For the word is creative. The spoken word is not a decoration upon life. It is a spiritual instrument. It plants, waters, builds, uproots, releases, and restores. Your words are always moving somewhere. They are either moving toward your promised land or circling the old wilderness. So ask yourself now, what must die for your wealth to rise? What must be buried for your love to awaken? What must be released for your peace to be born? What false sentence must be silenced so the divine sentence can speak through you? This is not mere self-improvement. This is soul surgery. This is not ordinary motivation. This is resurrection. I do not speak to comfort the ego. I speak to call forth the spirit within you. You were never created to adjust to lack. You were never created to manage pain as identity. You were never created to memorize failure and then call it personality. You were called, shaped, guided, and crowned by divine intelligence. Anything that does not agree with the divine I am within you must fall away. Not someday, not when the outer world gives permission, not when every fear has disappeared. Now, declare it with me. I now lay down the false. I bury the old. I rise in the name of the new. Divine order now governs my identity, my words, my path, and my life. This declaration is the beginning. It is the sentence that starts the separation. It is the word that swings the sword. For as long as you believe you are your past, your patterns, your mistakes, or your former personality, you will repeat them. But when you speak from the higher place, from the secret chamber of faith, from the living fire of the word, even death must obey. You are not merely becoming someone new. You are remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You are remembering the self that God knows, the true self, the illumined self, the divinely named self. And that holy self is not far away. It is rising. Two selves cannot rule the same consciousness. Just as light and darkness cannot hold dominion in the same room at the same time, the false self and the divine self cannot share the throne within you. Either the small self rules with its chains of fear, or the Christ consciousness within speaks with the scepter of truth. One voice must be lifted up, and one must be dethroned. One must be fed, and one must be starved. One must be repeated, and one must be silenced. I have seen many souls try to serve two masters. On the surface, they declare truth, but in the hidden chambers of the mind, they still bow to limitation, fear, resentment, pride, and control. They say, I trust God, yet rehearse disaster. They say, I am provided for, yet tremble before every bill. They say, I am loved, yet expect abandonment at every turn. That divided speech divides the field. The false self is the identity built from wounds, memories, fear, and the illusion of separation. It is the voice that says, protect yourself when love arrives. It whispers, who do you think you are, when opportunity calls? It cries, be realistic, when spirit begins to unfold the miraculous. And so I give you the law of substitution, not as a theory, not as a pretty phrase, but as spiritual surgery. You must speak one identity down and speak the other up. You must choose which voice will live through your mouth. Will you speak as one rejected or as one redeemed? Will you affirm what the world taught you or what heaven has already written of you? Will you keep saying, I am not enough, and then wonder why your good seems delayed? You cannot say, I am unworthy and I am divinely guided, with the same breath without splitting your power. You cannot bless lack in the morning and expect overflow by night. The subconscious receives what is impressed upon it repeatedly. It does not argue with your phrases. It receives them as instruction. The ego is not cast out by force. It is starved by silence and replaced by the word. Every time you say, I am poor, you crown the old self. But when you say, I am abundance made visible through divine law, you awaken the higher self. Every time you say, I am broken, the grave clothes tighten. But when you say, I am whole, by the power of divine life within me, the tomb begins to tremble. You do not fight the old self. You do not wrestle with shadows. You do not argue endlessly with fear. You replace fear with faith. You replace lack with divine supply. You replace confusion with guidance. You replace the old record with the new decree. You lift up truth until the lie has no air to breathe. Sigh, I am not the old. I am the risen. I am not governed by fear. I am guided by divine intelligence. My words are filled with power and peace. I speak only the word of faith, abundance, and right action. Do not say these words as a decoration. Say them as command. Say them until your inner world hears. Say them until your body softens. Say them until your mind ceases to resist. Say them until the subconscious accepts the new order as law. Repetition is not vain when it is filled with faith. Repetition is rhythm, and rhythm becomes reprogramming. The word repeated with conviction becomes flesh. It becomes atmosphere. It becomes action. It becomes demonstration. The voice you lift is the self you resurrect. So ask yourself, which voice have you been lifting? The voice of the wounded one? The voice of the afraid one? The voice of the rejected one? Or the voice of the one who knows that divine order is already moving, already preparing, already clearing the way? The higher self within you does not wait for permission. It waits for declaration. Give it a voice today, for what you say must live, and what you stop feeding must die. What you call yourself becomes your life, not eventually, not in some distant hour, immediately, in the invisible field where all visible things begin. Your word creates your world. Your declaration builds the house your spirit must live in. Your identity is not shaped by circumstance first. It is shaped by speech, belief, repetition, and inner agreement. The most sacred question is not, what happened to me? The most sacred question is, what do I call myself now? For identity is pronounced. It is not merely inherited from the past. It is received from spirit and activated through the mouth. Scripture says, let the weak say, I am strong. It does not say, let the strong boast of strength. It says, let the weak say. Those who appear depleted, discouraged, delayed, and defeated are instructed to speak the opposite of appearance. Why? Because truth is not reactive. Truth is creative. Truth does not bow to the condition. Truth calls forth the divine pattern behind the condition. Truth speaks to the invisible and commands it into form. When you say, "I am strong," while weakness is present, you are not lying. You are displacing the weakness. You are letting the false condition die. You are summoning the self God has already completed in the realm of spirit. The old self clings to titles made in pain. I am not enough. I am always behind. I am the anxious one. I am the failure. I am unlucky. I am unwanted. I am bad with money. I always ruin things. These are not identities. They are spiritual contracts written in fear and shame. Every time you repeat them, you renew the lease of the old self. You give the tomb permission to remain sealed. You make the false name your address. But the moment you say, "I am chosen, I am free, I am divinely guided, I am wealth in form, I am radiant love, I am steady, ordered, clear, and blessed. The way is made clear before me." The old self trembles. Its contract is broken. The name tag falls away. A new you begins to emerge. Your mouth is your resurrection tool. Your sentence is your spiritual scaffolding. If you desire a new life, do not wait for the outer world to confirm it. Speak it until the inner world agrees. Speak it until your cells listen. Speak it until the mirror no longer reflects the old story, but recognizes the divine image. Every healing, every miracle, every awakening begins with a change in inner authority. Often it begins not with effort, but with utterance. A woman says, "I am supplied by divine substance," and her finances begin to reorder. A man says, "I am forgiven and free," and the chains of an old habit begin to loosen. A child of God says, "I am wanted, guided, loved, and protected," and peace enters the room. These are not empty affirmations. They are identity shifts. They are decrees. They are announcements that the eternal self is stepping forward and the old self is stepping down. So I ask you now, beloved soul, what have you called yourself lately? And more importantly, what will you call yourself next? The answer is not far away. It is as close as your breath. Speak, say, declare, for what you call yourself, you become, and what you refuse to speak in faith cannot rise. You are not healed by hiding the wound. You are healed by speaking death to the lie that the wound defines you. The law of release is not halfway. It does not negotiate with the old self. It does not decorate the prison. It opens the door and commands you to walk out. There can be no resurrection without burial, no crown without surrender, no transformation without the tearing down of the false identity. The lie must die. The mask must fall. The voice of fear must be silenced, not with hatred, but with divine authority. What is the lie that has ruled your life? That you will always struggle? That love is not for you? That success belongs to others? That your past has disqualified your future? These are not merely thoughts. They are agreements. Every time you repeat them, you enthrone limitation and make the true self wait outside the door. But by spiritual law, the agreement can be broken. You can speak the death of the lie and resurrect the truth. You can cancel the contract with the old voice and sign a new covenant with divine identity. But first, you must release. Release is not repression. Release is not denial. Release is declaration. It is looking at the false self and saying, "You are not who I am. You are a projection of fear, and I no longer serve you. I release the need to be wounded. I release the identity of lack. I release the repetition of the old story. I release the shame I kept wearing as a crown. I lay it down now. You must choose with holy courage to let the old voice die. Not patch it, not defend it, not explain it, not carry it into another year and call it wisdom. Speak its ending. Sigh. This self no longer rules me. This pattern no longer feeds me. This fear no longer names me. I speak the death of every false story. I bury the counterfeit. I rise in the power of who I truly am. This is the law of release. Not hiding, not hoping, not waiting, but placing the old self upon the altar of truth and letting the fire of the word consume it. You are not what happened to you. You are not your lowest moment. You are not the survival self you created in a season of fear. That self had a purpose, perhaps, but it is not your destiny. It must be thanked, released, and dismissed. And it does not always leave quietly. It leaves when it is told to leave. It leaves when it is named and denied. It leaves when your word says, enough. If you are still clinging, still repeating, still justifying the old story, then you are not yet fully free. You are still standing near the tomb. But if today you feel the tremble within, the holy revolt, the stirring of the new life, then open your mouth and speak the ending. Speak death to the lie. Speak life to the truth. Speak as one who is not afraid to bury what no longer belongs. For until something dies, nothing new can live. Until you release the lie, you cannot wear the truth. Until you bury the counterfeit, the crown remains unworn. Let it die, beloved. Let it die now, and watch what rises. I now speak to every listener whose soul has grown weary from carrying an identity that was never divinely authored. You have been loyal to a version of yourself shaped by fear. You have been faithful to an image built in the shadows of lack. You have been trained in the language of doubt, and that language has spoken over your finances, your relationships, your decisions, your body, your days, and your future. Now it must cease. I do not say this with sentimentality. I say it with divine certainty. Your resurrection begins with a funeral. The one to be buried is the small, frightened, double-minded self you have mistakenly called me. You have obeyed its voice. You have accepted its verdicts. You have rehearsed its lines until your subconscious wore them as truth. I always ruin things. I am not good with money. People always leave. Nothing works for me. It is too late. I am not ready. These are not harmless phrases. They are invisible agreements. They are instructions given to the law. And today, by the authority of awakened speech, you are instructed to break them. Declare, I no longer serve the voice of fear. I no longer walk in agreement with the defeated self. I do not carry the corpse of an expired identity into a future ordained for glory. Let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich in divine supply. Let the fearful say, I am bold, guided, protected, and free. Your freedom begins in declaration. It begins when you stop explaining the weakness and start speaking the strength. It begins when you stop rehearsing the bondage and start announcing the release. Sigh. I speak the word of release. I call out the old names: failure, broken, unlucky, unwanted, behind, unworthy, and I say, you are no longer permitted to live in the house of my being. I nullify the curses I have spoken over myself. I sever the spell of every word that did not originate in divine love. If you knew the power of your voice, you would never again speak carelessly about yourself. The spiritual realm responds to authority. Authority is expressed in rhythm, precision, conviction, and spoken truth. You must call the old self what it is: a counterfeit, an imposter formed by fear, trained by survival, and strengthened by repetition. But repetition does not make a thing true. It only makes it familiar. And what is familiar is not always divine. So ask yourself now, which phrases have I repeated in fear that must now be declared dead by the sword of the word? Name them, face them, then speak. I render you powerless. I erase you with light. I bury you in truth. And I rise. I rise as one born of divine life. I rise as one guided by divine intelligence. I rise as one authorized by faith to walk in order, abundance, love, and right action. This is not mere self-talk. This is resurrection language. The old self cannot follow you where the blessing lives. The vibration of fear cannot stand at the gates of provision. Let the dead bury the dead. You walk forward. If resistance rises in your body, if the mind tries to bargain with old patterns, remind it. That self is gone. That agreement is finished. That voice no longer governs me. I agree with God. I agree with divine order. I agree with healing, overflow, perfect timing, perfect love, and my perfect place in the divine plan. Speak the release aloud, because the body follows the voice. Say it with me now. I do not mourn the old self. I bury it. I do not negotiate with fear. I silence it. I do not delay my rising. I declare it. Speak it, and the wall begins to fall. Speak it, and the new self emerges. Speak it, and the dead will know you are no longer their home. Every morning is a resurrection, and every morning requires a burial. You cannot rise in new power while carrying yesterday's false identity into today's light. The soul does not ascend by accident. It ascends by decree. Therefore, the first work of the morning is not to consult the world. It is not to scroll through fear, receive the hypnosis of headlines, or listen to the chatter of appearances. The first work of the morning is to bury the false self, the one who failed yesterday, the one who feared yesterday, the one who flinched before opportunity, the one who crawled back into the familiar grave of shame. That self is not allowed to rise with you. That self must be declared finished. Sigh. I bury yesterday's defeat. I release yesterday's doubt. I cast out the voice that told me I am not ready. Today I rise. Today the old dies. Today the lie is laid to rest, and I ascend as the truth. Let this become your morning rhythm. Your voice is the trumpet before the walls. The walls fall when the decree is spoken. Do not wait for the world to validate your rising. Do not wait for the absence of fear before you act in faith. Do not wait to feel powerful before speaking from dominion. You are not buried by failure. You are buried by silence. And you are not raised by circumstance. You are raised by the word. Speak it before you see it. Say it before you feel it. Declare it before the outer world agrees. This is how divine law works. The subconscious is not moved by theory. It is moved by repeated instruction. Rhythm is the language of the body, and your word must become the rhythm of resurrection. Not once, not casually, not only when you feel inspired. Daily, faithfully, audibly. What you repeat, you resurrect. What you bless, you breathe life into. What you continue to describe, you continue to sustain. Therefore, stop describing the tomb. Speak the opening. Stop describing the chain. Speak the freedom. Stop describing the delay. Speak divine order. Declare, today I rise. Today the old dies. Today I walk as the new creation, and nothing of yesterday's fear may follow me. Divine order now opens my way. My words are filled with power and peace. I speak only the word of faith, abundance, and right action. Speak it, live it, rise. You must learn to speak not from your wounds, not from your history, not from lack, but from the throne. When I say, speak as the risen, I do not mean pretend. I do not mean imitate a condition you do not believe. I mean step boldly into the voice of your true identity and speak the world into alignment with it. You do not rise by wishing. You rise by word. Let there be light was not a plea. It was a decree. Until your mouth stops echoing the language of the grave, the stone will not roll away. You may be breathing, yes. You may be moving through the day, yes. But if your words are still saturated with fear, loss, resentment, I cannot, and I do not know how, then you are still speaking from the tomb. You are not stuck. You are not behind. You are simply out of rhythm with your resurrection. So enter the rhythm. I am the new self, and I walk as the risen. I do not beg, I bless. I do not chase. I magnetize by divine identity. I do not fear, I decree. I do not collapse before appearances. I speak from spiritual authority. To speak from the throne is to speak from the place where nothing is missing. The risen self is not trying to earn, prove, beg, or survive. It is here to express divine life. It is here to declare the unseen as seen, the impossible as inevitable, the new as now. Speak not as a seeker only. Speak as one sent. Your life is not waiting for you to beg more, worry more, explain more, or analyze the old self more deeply. Your life is waiting for your tongue to align with truth. Your new name is the key. Your new identity is the weapon. Your word is the seed. Until you call yourself what God calls you, you will keep circling the wilderness of half-manifested good. You say, I am trying. Speak instead, I am doing the thing appointed for me. You say, I am healing. Speak instead, I am whole in divine life now. You say, I hope it will happen. Speak instead, the way is made clear before me. The tomb opens for the one who speaks from the throne. No person, no circumstance, no appearance can permanently shut what your word has opened in faith. Do not walk as the wounded. Walk as the word made visible. Sigh, I walk as the risen. I speak from the throne. Divine order now governs every part of my life. Nothing can stand against the word spoken in faith, love, and truth. Let this be the new language of your life. Let this be your mouth's resurrection. Now, beloved listener, seal this teaching in your own voice. Do not let these words remain merely beautiful. Let them become practical. Let them become breath. Let them become the first speech of the morning and the last remembrance at night. When fear comes, do not entertain it. When the old name calls, do not answer. When the former self knocks, do not open the door and invite it to dine. Stand in spiritual authority and say, I am not who I was. I am not governed by the old story. I am guided by divine intelligence. My words are creative, my faith is active, and my path is ordered. I speak the word of faith, and divine order now opens my way. The old self cannot wear the garments of glory. The false self cannot inherit the promise. The fearful self cannot rule the kingdom within you. So bury it with love. Bury it with certainty. Bury it with the spoken word. And rise. Rise in faith. Rise in divine order. Rise in abundance. Rise in peace. Rise in the holy knowledge that the word you speak in truth is never wasted. For divine law is listening. Divine intelligence is guiding. Divine order is working. And the way that seemed closed can open in a moment when consciousness is changed and the word is spoken with faith. If this message has stirred the truth within you, write this declaration in the comments and speak it aloud. I speak the word of faith, and divine order now opens my way. Say it not as a hope, but as a command of faith. Say it as one who has buried the false. Say it as one who has risen in truth. And so it is. You must learn to hear the difference between the voice of affliction and the voice of ascension. One is the voice of the beggar, the other is the voice of the heir. The voice of affliction begins with fear. It says, what if this does not work? What if they leave? What if I fail? What if the door closes? What if I am too late? It is the old song of bondage. It is the murmur of the former self still carrying burdens it was never meant to bear. It tells you that suffering is permanent, that struggle is noble, that delay is your portion, and that disappointment must be expected because it has visited you before. But I say to you with the authority of spiritual law, no one rises while the mouth agrees with affliction. The tongue is the rudder of the soul. You cannot speak defeat and arrive at dominion. You cannot bless fear and harvest peace. You cannot announce scarcity and then wonder why abundance seems to stand at a distance. Your words must match your resurrection, or you will wander in circles, praying with one hand and cursing with the other. Train your mouth, therefore, to know only the tone of blessing. Speak as one who already belongs to divine supply. Speak as one who is already loved by infinite love. Speak as one who is already guided by divine intelligence. Speak as one who has already been lifted out of the tomb of old thinking. Learn the difference. Affliction says, "It is too hard." Ascension says, "Divine strength is now expressing through me." Affliction says, "Nothing ever works for me." Ascension says, "Everything is now working together for my good." Affliction says, "I am alone." Ascension says, "I am guided, guarded, surrounded, and sustained." Affliction says, "There is not enough." Ascension says, "Divine supply is inexhaustible, and my good comes to me in right ways, under grace, in perfect order." One voice contracts the soul, the other expands it. One closes the windows, the other opens the heavens. One repeats the old bondage, the other announces the new kingdom. Do not allow affliction to write the script of your life with your own tongue. The mouth is a temple. Do not offer complaint upon its altar. Do not let fear enter the sanctuary and call itself truth. Speak not what your fear believes. Speak what the divine self knows. For resurrection does not begin in the grave. It begins in the mouth. So ask yourself now, what is the dominant vibration of my voice? Do I speak as the risen one or as the afflicted one? Do I cast myself down with subtle self-pity? Or do I cast mountains into the sea with a word of faith? The word is never neutral. It either multiplies your heaven or lengthens your wilderness. Every time you open your mouth, you choose which world you will inhabit. So open it carefully. Open it like a gate. Let it release honey, not poison. Let it open tombs, not seal them. Let it call forth life, not repeat death. For life and death are in the power of the tongue, and you shall eat the fruit of your own speech. Let the weak say, "I am strong." Let the poor say, "I am rich in divine substance." Let the fearful say, "I am bold, calm, protected, and led." Not because of what appears, but because of the law with which they are aligned. Your mouth was never meant merely to report appearances. Your mouth was meant to create a higher appearance. Stop describing the cross as though it were the end. Speak the resurrection. Speak the throne. Speak the inheritance. Speak as though the stone has already rolled away, because in truth, in spirit, it has. There is a sound that chains make when they rattle in the soul. It is the tone of affliction. I have heard it in the words of those who speak defeat before the day has begun. I have heard it in drawing rooms, in offices, in families, in the quiet confessions of people who do not know they are prophesying their own bondage. They say, "I cannot make it. It has always been this way. Money slips through my fingers. People always disappoint me. The world is getting darker. It never works for me." These are the phrases of affliction. They are not born of heaven. They are born of history. They do not proceed from the divine center. They proceed from the wounded echo of former selves that never dared to die and therefore never truly rose. Affliction has a voice, and so does ascension. Which tone have you trained your mouth to carry? Do you speak as one still buried under lack, loss, illness, confusion, and fear? Or do you speak as one who has rolled away the stone and stepped into a morning of miracles? The mouth reveals the inner altar. You may say you believe in abundance, yet speak continually of expenses, shortage, and impossibility. You may say you trust divine timing, yet curse every delay. You may kneel in prayer for healing, then rise and rehearse the symptoms as though they were sovereign. This is not resurrection. This is rehearsal. It is rehearsing the life you no longer desire with the very words that keep it alive. The word is a resurrection instrument. With the word, the dead are called forth. With the word, the bound are loosed. With the word, the true self steps out of the grave clothes of habit, shame, and inherited fear. The resurrected tone does not plead, it commands. It does not describe the tomb, it names the promise. It does not echo history, it heralds heaven. Speak as one who has already risen. Speak as one whose treasure is not held in the hands of people, but in the vaults of divine law. Speak the blessing before the miracle arrives, for the blessing is the atmosphere in which the miracle can breathe. You may ask, how will I know if I am speaking from affliction or from ascension? You will know by the effect of your own words upon your soul. When you speak from affliction, your words close in around you. They shrink your vision. They dim the light. They tighten the body. They make tomorrow feel heavy before it has arrived. But when you speak from ascension, you rise in your own hearing. The soul stands taller. The breath deepens. The heart remembers. The voice becomes clearer, steadier, more luminous. You feel authority return, for you are not a beggar before life. You are an heir of divine good. You are not waiting to be delivered by outer conditions. You are the one who speaks deliverance into the conditions. Sigh. I do not tolerate the language of defeat in my world. I do not negotiate with lack. I do not entertain the tone of affliction. I train my mouth to carry blessing. I train my lips to name what divine love has promised. I bless before the harvest. I decree before the evidence. I call forth good before I see it. This is the pattern of the risen life. Speak blessing until your bones believe it. Speak truth until your atmosphere shifts. Speak life until every sealed place in the soul cracks open and light rushes in. Let this be your daily discipline. Listen to your voice. Listen not only to what you say, but how you say it. Correct your own cadence. When affliction sneaks into your speech, arrest it. When defeat creeps into your declarations, cast it out. When fear reaches your lips, substitute it with faith. For the word is a two-edged sword. You are either using it to sever your chains or to cut down your own future. Say aloud, my tone is resurrected. My mouth is holy. My voice is the voice of dominion. My words are filled with power, peace, and divine authority. And so it is. You must be faithful and fearless in the rewriting of your own name. The past is not your identity unless your tongue keeps dragging it forward. Stop embalming your past with your words. Stop breathing life into what no longer serves the kingdom of your soul. Stop dressing old wounds in new sentences and calling it honesty. Every time you say, I have always been anxious, you appoint anxiety as ruler of the present. Every time you say, I have never been good with money, you nail your finances to a cross of limitation. Every time you say, this is just how I am, you close the door on the higher self that is trying to enter. You were not called to echo bondage. You were called to declare liberty. You must make the break in the invisible before the visible can shift. Stand before the inner tribunal of your own consciousness and speak judgment upon every false label you have ever worn. Say aloud, I am no longer small. I am no longer the wounded one. I am no longer the afterthought. I am no longer the almost success. I am no longer the broken branch. I am no longer governed by inherited fear. Each phrase is a shovel of light. Each declaration buries the corpse of the counterfeit self. Unless it is buried, it will keep rising to haunt your harvest. The subconscious mind records what is repeated. Every sentence is etched like a groove in the inner instrument. If you do not break the old record, it will continue to play its song of limitation, even when the outer music has changed. So take up the hammer of the word and shatter the old record. Sigh, I am no longer the one who lacks. I am no longer the one who fears. I am no longer the one who waits outside my own good. I am no longer living under the old name. You must not merely think these words. You must proclaim them. The word is spirit in action. What you speak into law returns to you in form, multiplied according to your conviction, your faith, and your inner agreement. It is not silent wishing that moves mountains. It is spoken dominion. Many people say, I am trying to change. Stop trying in the old way. Begin declaring in the new way. Many say, I am healing. Say instead, I am whole now in divine life. Many say, I do not know if I can. Say instead, I am supported by the infinite. I can do what is mine to do through the power of the Christ within. This is how you burn the false record with truth. Not by endless analysis of the old tape, not by decorating the prison, not by pleading with the past to release you. You set fire to it with the matchstick of the word. Your mouth is the altar. Your phrase is the offering. Your faith is the fire. Sigh, I am no longer living under the old name. Say it until the vibration becomes your new garment. Say it until the labels peel away. Say it until the atmosphere changes. Say it until the inner heavens rearrange themselves to mirror your courage. Let the weak say, I am strong. Not, I am trying to become strong. Not one day I may be strong. Say, I am strong. The word is the gateway. The word is the instrument. The word is the divine rewiring. So now, beloved listener, take up your spiritual pen and write a new sentence over your life. I am no longer afraid of my own power. I am no longer loyal to struggle. I am no longer at war with myself. I am guided by divine intelligence. I am placed, prospered, protected, and prepared. Write it. Then speak it aloud until the atmosphere trembles. Speak it until the old self hears it from its grave and knows it has no authority to return. This is how resurrection begins, with a tongue that buries the lie and an identity born from flame. The old self is on trial. Let the word judge it. Let the false be found guilty. Let the true self rise. You cannot walk in dominion while wearing the rags of your former name. The tongue is the chisel of reality. What you say about yourself becomes the image engraved upon your life. The law is simple and exact. What you name, you claim. If you say, I am always late, the law receives that sentence as command, and delay finds a way to organize itself around you. If you say, I am not consistent, then inconsistency is given permission to repeat. If you say, I am unlucky, you make yourself available to the very disorder you claim to dislike. Words are not passive. They are blueprints. They are summons. They are seeds with instructions hidden inside them. The subconscious does not argue, it obeys. So long as you call yourself by the names of weakness, your life will try to dress itself in the garments of weakness. So long as you call yourself by the names of delay, disorder, and disappointment, your affairs will tend to arrange themselves accordingly. What you decree about yourself builds either a temple or a tomb. You must choose which it shall be. The old self will offer you comfortable chains. It will say, I am a procrastinator. I am shy. I am broke. I am not disciplined. I am unlucky. I always sabotage good things. And you may be tempted to nod in agreement because the phrase feels familiar. But there is no harmless label attached to I am. Every phrase joined to I am either magnifies limitation or glorifies divine truth. There is no idle speech in the kingdom of consciousness. There is no neutral self-description. To say I am broke is not merely to report a bank account. It is to build a spiritual image of lack and hand it power. But the moment you awaken, the moment you renounce the false names and reclaim the true title, everything begins to change. The awakened soul says, I speak, and it is done in divine order. I am the resurrection of every buried promise within me. I am order. I am precision. I am completion. I am guided to right action at the right time in the right way. When the old voice whispers, you always mess it up, the spiritual self replies, I am divinely ordered. I am calm, clear, accurate, and led. When the lie says you never follow through, truth rises higher and declares, I walk in divine discipline and perfect execution. I am obedient to the guidance of Spirit. I complete what is mine to complete. You must say what Spirit says about you even when evidence appears to mock you. Even when the outer world contradicts the word, the inner world must remain anchored in divine description. You are not your habits. You are not your past. You are not your trauma. You are what you call yourself now. So I ask you, what names must die? What labels must be buried so the Christ identity may rise in you? Take inventory of the phrases you speak when you are tired, frustrated, hurt, or afraid. Do you say, "That is just how I am"? Or do you say, "That is who I was, but I now speak a new name over myself"? The children of Israel could not inherit the promised land while calling themselves grasshoppers. Neither can you inherit wealth, love, dominion, divine assignment, peace, and right place while calling yourself small. Speak up, speak true, speak strong. You are not waiting to become something worthy. You are naming what already exists in spirit, and the universe responds to the appointed word. Declare, "What I name, I claim. What I bless becomes bold. What I decree becomes me. I am the image and likeness of divine completion. I am the spoken success of heaven made visible. I speak, and it is done in divine order." Beloved, you must understand the secret law of death that gives way to resurrection. You are not waiting for a new self to be delivered to you from far away. You are called to bury the old self first. You cannot resurrect what you refuse to declare dead. Most people linger in suffering not because circumstance is stronger than spirit, but because they remain in covenant with their former self-image. They speak to it daily. They feed it with attention. They rehearse its wounds, its disappointments, its excuses, and its story of limitation. But today, speak to the old self as though it were a stranger trespassing in the house of truth. Turn to it with calm authority and say, "You are no longer needed. I release you. I no longer serve your memory, your shame, or your fear. You were a costume for a season of learning, but I am no longer cast in that role." This is not merely poetic. It is spiritual surgery. The old self must die, and you must write its eulogy with words of truth. For the old self lives in the tomb of repetition. It survives because you keep visiting its grave, placing flowers upon it, remembering it, justifying it, and calling it me. But the grave is empty unless your word fills it with life again. The body of your past identity is lifeless unless your speech resurrects it. So go to that inner grave and speak the final word over it. I am not who I was. I no longer answer to fear, lack, shame, or self-rejection. That version of me is buried in divine silence. I walk in newness of identity. The Christ within you never calls you by your history. The divine within calls you by your destiny. It calls you forth. It says, "Come out of the grave of the old name. Come out of the story that held you. Come out of the belief that you were less than divine life expressing. And you cannot rise while still clutching the shroud. You must allow what no longer serves you to decay and fall from memory, not with bitterness, not with hatred, but with divine finality. One must prepare for the good one desires. But preparation is not only expectation. Preparation is also making room. You cannot pour new wine into old skins. You cannot live resurrected while dragging the weight of an old self behind you. Your good is waiting for a name it can attach to. The name must be renewed. Let the weak say, "I am strong." This is not denial. It is replacement. It is resurrection speech. Speak not merely about what happened. Speak to it. Address the old wound like a fading shadow and say, "Your purpose is fulfilled. You have no power here. You are no longer necessary. You are no longer my name." When you speak like this, heaven records your courage, and the cells of your being begin to reorganize around the word you have spoken. Many speak of healing, but avoid burial. They want resurrection without relinquishment. But there is no rebirth without release, no transformation without a tomb. If you want to rise, you must declare the burial complete. Not someday, not once in emotion, but repeatedly with the spoken word until the inner law accepts the new command. Speak to the wound and say, "You are no longer necessary." Speak to shame and say, "You are no longer my name." Speak to fear and say, "You may go in peace, for I no longer live where you reside." This is spiritual clearance. The old self cannot argue with a word spoken in dominion. Speak without apology. Let the dead bury the dead. You must rise and walk as a new creature in spirit. You are not your memories. You are not your failures. You are not the projections of those who could not see your truth. You are the word you now declare. So let that word be bold. Let it be final. Let it be filled with light. The grave is ready. Your new life is not waiting for a miracle. It is waiting for a burial. Speak it, declare it, and watch how heaven begins to move. What you behold, you become. The mirror does not rule you. It reflects what you have agreed to see. Many people look into the mirror and repeat defeat. They say, I am tired. They say, I do not have enough. They say, I am aging. They say, I do not like what I see. And so they reinforce the picture of the fading self. They give prophecy to the surface. They mirror the curse instead of calling forth the blessing. But I declare to you now, the mirror has no power until you give it a word. The mirror is not your judge. It is your altar. And every altar requires a declaration. When you speak to your reflection in truth, you are not merely addressing a body. You are addressing consciousness. You are calling forth the divine image hidden beneath fear, fatigue, disappointment, and old suggestion. The false self born of shame, lack, fear, and memory must die daily. It must die in every glance that would repeat its old narrative. It must die when you look into your own eyes and choose not to rehearse failure but to prophesy glory. Look at yourself and say, that is not the lie. That is not the wound. That is not the rejected one. I see the risen one. Not someday. Not after everything changes. Now. You are not resurrected by time. You are resurrected by truth. You are not made new by waiting. You are made new by pronouncement. What you speak over your reflection, you engrave into your soul. It is written, behold, I make all things new. To behold is to see again, to look beyond the mask, to pierce the appearance, and declare the divine reality beneath it. So I ask you, who do you see? Are you still prophesying the one who doubts? Are you still reflecting the one who fears? Or have you made a holy break with the mask? Have you spoken the funeral words over the old self? Or are you still allowing that expired image to govern your decisions? Look again. The mirror is waiting. The law is listening. Say with holy audacity, I see the risen one. I see the heir. I see the new creation. I see the living word. I see the image of divine life. Then pause. Receive it. You do not have to fix yourself first. You do not have to deserve what you see. You need only to behold with faith, and spirit will do the rest. You are not improving the ego. You are not decorating the old self. You are pronouncing the wings while the cocoon still clings to your shoulders, and the law will respond. Many avoid this mirror moment because it feels too bold. The old self screams to stay alive. It says, who are you to say such things? But the moment you speak resurrection, the higher law receives it. The one who can look into the mirror and call forth the divine image has already crossed over. The mirror no longer shows a victim, a struggler, a debtor, a doubter. It shows the eternal image, full of glory, power, supply, peace, intelligence, and love. That is who you are, but your word must unveil it. So take your stand. Look into the mirror, not as a ritual of vanity, but as an act of spiritual authority. Take your tears if they are all you have. Take your trembling voice if it is all you can offer. Then speak. I see the risen one. I see the one guided by divine intelligence. I see the one supplied by divine substance. I see the one loved by infinite love. I see the one who rises now. Say it again until your soul vibrates with recognition. Say it until your nervous system yields. Say it until the image in the glass no longer seems like a stranger, but like a promise remembered. This is spiritual resurrection. Not after the bank clears. Not after the diagnosis changes. Not after every person approves. Now, for every day you delay this declaration, you empower the mask to rule. But when you speak resurrection into your own reflection, You have already risen above the grave of the past. Now the mirror is ready. The law is ready. Speak, look, rise. There are those who believe that pain, difficulty, or resistance proves they are doing something wrong. But I say unto you, often it proves the opposite. Pain may be the sound of the lie breaking. Resistance may be the rattle of chains preparing to fall. The old identity does not surrender without protest. When truth begins to dethrone the false self may panic. It may scream. It may bargain. It may tell you that your declaration is foolish, that your faith is too bold, that you should return to what is familiar. Do not mistake this resistance for failure. When the body trembles and the mind protests, when the old identity begins to rise up and defend itself, it is often because the lie is losing its throne. That is not the time to become silent. That is the time to speak more clearly. Stand still in spiritual authority and say, "This is my hour. I do not retreat. I reign in truth. I do not misread the shaking. The old is passing. The new is coming forth." For too long the soul has misunderstood the signs. It has mistaken discomfort for misalignment, when discomfort may be the shaking of dry bones at the sound of the word. When the dead place begins to stir, there is motion. When the stone begins to roll, there is noise. When the old structure begins to fall, there is dust. Do not worship the dust. Do not fear the noise. Do not call the shaking defeat. Sigh. Even while the appearance is unmoved, I stand in truth. Even while the bill is unpaid, divine supply is active. Even while fear whispers, faith speaks louder. This is holy ground. I am giving birth to the new. I will not retreat from resurrection. The lie wants your silence. It wants your reversal. It wants your agreement with appearances. But you must agree with truth and keep speaking. If the tide roars higher, let your voice rise with it. If the flames come closer, let your praise burn brighter. If resistance grows, let the declaration grow stronger. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, not because the weapon never appeared, but because you refused to give it your agreement. You did not crown it with your speech. You did not bow your tongue to its illusion. Sigh. I do not argue with fear. I do not debate with doubt. I do not negotiate with appearances. I speak the word, and I walk forward. You walk through the fire because you know the fire cannot consume what spirit has ordained to rise. You stand before lions because you know divine authority closes every mouth raised against your destiny. You bless the empty vessel because you know multiplication begins where obedience meets faith. When resistance roars, do not panic. Prophesy. Speak not as one under trial, but as one who governs trial by truth. Say to the resistance, "You are evidence that I am near. You are proof that I must not stop. You are the final guardian at the tomb of my old self, and I now roll away the stone. Let the resistance rage. It is nothing compared to the word you carry, and the words spoken in faith shall not return empty. Every time you spoke lack, you signed an agreement. Every time you entertained fear and gave it language, you placed your name beneath a sentence of bondage. Every time you declared, "I cannot, I never, I do not, I always fail," you bound yourself by invisible oath to an inferior identity. But I tell you now, no soul remains bound when it learns to speak from truth. Every old belief, every sentence of limitation, every story of defeat you have repeated to yourself is a contract drawn up by fear and signed by habit. And today, by the power of awakened speech, it can be torn apart. You must speak death to the lie before you speak life to the truth. If you do not renounce the false identity, you continue to give it room. And what you give room to, you may soon find yourself serving. You may have believed you were the victim, the failure, the always late one, the never chosen one, the one who comes close but never receives. But these were only lines handed to you by fear, memorized by repetition, and performed in the theater of appearances. They were never written by the hand of God. The divine self cannot rise while the false self is still performing. Tear the script. Cancel the scene. Burn the old contract. Declare, that is not my name. That is not my covenant. That is not my inheritance. The law waits for command. It does not argue. It does not hesitate. It responds to the word impressed upon consciousness. When you say, I am tired, the law says, so be it. When you say, I never win, the law does not comfort you. It confirms the pattern you have named. But the moment you say, I now rip every false agreement with lack, delay, and defeat, you begin to break the back of what you once called normal. What is normalized in speech becomes legalized in experience. What is permitted in language becomes permission in demonstration. Therefore, speak now with sacred finality. Every old belief is a false contract, and I tear it with my word. I dissolve it with my voice. I disown it with my authority. I no longer sign for struggle. I no longer agree with delay. I no longer answer to the name of fear. You are not governed by the lower law of appearances. You are governed by the higher law of spirit. And in that court, your word has standing. Not your mood, not your history, not your trauma, your word. That is the pen that writes the new agreement. That is the signature that heaven recognizes. So if you want to see what tomorrow is becoming, do not ask your fear. Ask your mouth. If you want to rise into new wealth, new love, new peace, new authority, and new divine right action, you must renounce the inheritance of the old self with fire upon your tongue. Sigh, I walk under no curse. I renew no bondage. I confirm no sentence but the sentence of freedom. The old self dies with a word, and the new self rises upon its ashes. Speak now. Burn the old contract. Say only what heaven is allowed to echo. You are not waiting on time. You are not waiting on money. You are not waiting on people. You are waiting on the death of who you used to be. The lie you rehearsed must die. The fear you obeyed must die. The image you protected must die. The story you polished and repeated until it sounded like truth must die. Every delay in demonstration may be mercy from divine law. For if your blessing arrived while you were still carrying the dead self, you might sabotage it, fear it, misunderstand it, shrink from it, or lose it through the old consciousness that could not contain the new good. Your word is not meant to decorate the ego. Your word is the flame that burns it. There comes a time in spiritual maturity when you must command the burial. The old self does not die quietly. It bargains, it rehearses, it panics. It reminds you of every mistake, every loss, every embarrassment, every reason you should remain small. It says, stay where it is familiar. Stay where no one expects too much. Stay where fear can still call you by name. But I do not instruct you to comfort what divine truth has called you to release. The cross always precedes the crown. And so, I give you now a 7-day command. 7 days of sacred spoken substitution, where the death of the lie becomes the birth of the new life. Do not perform this as an empty ritual. Speak with attention. Speak with your whole being. Speak as though the old contracts are being torn in the invisible and a new decree is being written over your life. Day 1. Speak aloud. I revoke every word, every vow, every identity that kept me small, stuck, ashamed, delayed, or afraid. I am no longer in covenant with who I was. I release the old image and receive the divine image now. Feel this declaration. Let it cut through the cords of the past. Do not argue with the remnants. Do not explain yourself to the old self. Just keep speaking. The word knows what to do. Day 2. Sigh. I no longer serve my struggle. I no longer perform for approval. I am not my wound. I am the living word of truth, expressing now. This is the day your soul begins to surface. Speak it even if your lips tremble. Speak it even if the old emotions rise. Speak it as one who knows that faith does not wait for feelings to agree. Day 3. Declare. I am unavailable to be who I was. I bury the ego with joy. My resurrection has already begun. Divine order now rearranges my inner world and my outer affairs. This is the holy turning. Resistance may flare up because the former self wants to remain alive, but speak louder than resistance. Walk if you must. Weep if you must. Place your hand over your heart if you must, but do not stop. Declare until your atmosphere shifts. Day 4. Now, begin to speak the rising. The old has passed. The new has come. I rise today in perfect union with divine law. I am guided to right action. I am placed in my right position. I am supplied from the inexhaustible source. Say this as you rise from sleep. Say it as you prepare your food. Say it as you walk to work. Say it when money leaves your hand. Say it when an email arrives, when a door closes, when a delay appears. Let this phrase saturate your system until it echoes even in silence. Day 5. Speak. I walk as the risen one. I magnetize by identity, not by strain. I release the residue of every old cycle. I move in divine rhythm, divine timing, and divine order. As you speak this, your field begins to reorder itself. New ideas arrive, new instructions come quietly, new people appear, old attractions lose their power, not because you forced life, but because you aligned with a higher pattern. Day 6. Declare, I am not trying to change. I am already made new. I am not fixing the old. I am obeying the truth of what I am in spirit. Let this be your refrain. You are not begging for transformation. You are agreeing with it. You are not pleading for a new identity. You are receiving the one that was already written in divine mind. Day 7. Sigh. I am the living proof of resurrection. The old me is unrecognizable. The new me is undeniable. I walk in final authority. I speak the word of faith, and divine order now opens my way. This is not mere repetition. It is resurrection. The word spoken with surrender and conviction dismantles the fortress of delay. Speak as though you mean it. Speak as though the stone has already moved. Speak as though heaven has already answered. For the only thing standing between your present and your promise may be a mouth too timid to command the burial. 7 days, 7 decrees, 1 death, 1 rising. Do not rehearse the dead self's fear. Do not negotiate with the tomb. Speak it, bury it, rise. You must carry the cross before you wear the crown. That is the law. And the cross is not merely outside you. It is first within you. It is not simply what people say, what life takes, or what circumstance seems to demand. The cross is the cry of the false self when it is no longer worshipped. The cross is the burning away of pride. The cross is the death of old identification. The cross is the agony of yielding every idol, every lie, every cherished wound, every self-image that kept you familiar with limitation. And yet, through that death, the crown descends, not by struggle, by surrender. Many suffer because they cling. They cling to old habits, false roles, outworn labels, inherited fears, and the sad little comforts of a familiar prison. But truth cannot crown a divided soul. You cannot hold the old name in one hand and receive the new nature with the other. The crown rests only upon the head that has bowed to spiritual law. The world teaches people to avoid the cross. It says, protect your image, feed your ego, take the path of least resistance, shield yourself from discomfort, keep the mask polished. But I say to you, discomfort is sacred when it leads to divine transformation. The cross must be carried daily. It is the discipline of the tongue. It is the refusal to report appearances as final. It is the refusal to curse what looks like lack. It is the decision to bless before you see, to speak faith before evidence, to stand in divine order when disorder knocks at the door. Every time you bless what bruises you, every time you declare truth over what contradicts it, every time you refuse to call yourself by the name of your wound, you are carrying the cross and forging the crown. You are laying down the noisy, anxious, personality-driven self and calling forth the divine I am, the Christ identity within, the true self that knows no lack, no defeat, no abandonment, no fear. Christ carried the cross publicly and was misunderstood. So may you be misunderstood when you choose truth over performance, surrender over striving, declaration over doubt, and divine identity over the approval of others. But beloved, the cross precedes the coronation. Do not resist it. Do not explain it away. The old self will cry, "This is death," and spirit will answer, "Yes, and it is also resurrection." When you speak the word over your cross and say, "This situation cannot defeat me. It can only reveal me," the burden is lifted into glory. You do not suffer under it as before. You ascend through it. I have seen people who looked defeated on the outside cast down, rejected, forgotten by others, yet they bore their crosses with honor. They blessed dry ground. They gave thanks before the cupboard filled. They spoke supply while holding pennies. They spoke love while standing alone. They spoke peace while the world called them foolish. And one day the crown came. Not always in the way the world expected, not always with trumpet and applause, but they ruled. They ruled their emotions. They ruled their words. They ruled their circumstances by refusing to bow to appearances. This is the mystery of the cross. What feels like loss may be the path of dominion. What feels like death may be the threshold of divine kingship. The cross is your transformation. The cross is your refinement. The cross is the death of the old name and the rising of the divine identity. Speak it daily. I die to fear. I rise in faith. I surrender the old name. I receive the crown of divine identity. Say it again with the thunder of heaven and the peace of resurrection. I die to fear. I rise in faith. Fear is not yours. It is a garment of dust. It is a voice of the grave. It is a shadow that flees when light is spoken. You rise because you speak. You ascend because you declare. You refuse to walk beneath false appearances. You speak the word that lifts you. You speak the word that frees you. And in your speaking, the grave clothes fall. The stone rolls back. The new self steps forth. Now let the declarations become deeper. Let them move not merely across your lips, but through your body, your memory, your atmosphere, your hidden places. Sigh. I no longer walk with the dead thoughts of doubt. I no longer feast with the ghosts of guilt. I die to fear. I rise in faith. My words bury bondage. Every syllable of truth I release is a shovel of power upon the grave of my former chains. Every declaration is a hammer against the lock. Every faithful sentence is a burial cloth wrapped around deception. I no longer entertain the idea that bondage is permanent. It only lived because I kept it alive in the unspoken places of fear. Now I speak. I speak until every shackle trembles. I speak until every lie dissolves in the fire of certainty. I speak the burial of limitation. I speak the funeral of fear. I speak the silence of every false name ever assigned to me. My words are not suggestions. They are sentences final, holy, and binding, spoken under the authority of spiritual law. My mouth is the tomb and the trumpet. Out of this mouth comes death to error and resurrection to truth. It is both grave and gate. What I speak dead is buried. What I declare true is raised. With one breath I bury shame. With the next, I raise dignity. With one breath, I bury lack. With the next, I call forth divine supply. With one breath, I bury confusion. With the next, I receive guidance. I have seen the power of this mouth. It once spoke itself into darkness. Now it speaks itself into light. It is no longer a mirror of the world. It is an instrument through which the world is moved. I trumpet justice. I trumpet increase. I trumpet health, joy, love, peace, right action, divine order, and divine right outcomes. This mouth is not neutral. It is holy. It is dangerous to all that is false. It is awakening to all that is true. My mouth is the tomb and the trumpet. I speak the funeral of failure. I will not weep over what never belonged to my divine identity. I will not eulogize the lie. I gather no flowers for what God never planted. I speak ashes over every betrayal, every collapse, every almost that haunted my soul. I lay them to rest, not with sorrow, but with spiritual finality. Failure is not my ruler. Failure is not my name. Failure is a fallen mask, and I now speak its funeral. No memory may resurrect it. No echo may call it back. No opinion may breathe life into it. The tomb is sealed. The old sentence is finished. Here lies failure, unclaimed, unnamed, undone. I speak the funeral of failure, and I rise as the heir of divine success. Old names no longer reach me. Not the name I was called by those in fear. Not the name I answered to in seasons of compromise. Not the name I whispered to myself in moments of shame. Not the name that belonged to a version of me who had forgotten the law of the word. I am no longer accessible to insult, limitation, inherited shame, or ancient discouragement. The mail of judgment is returned unopened. The voice of ridicule finds no audience. The old labels call, but I do not come. I dwell in the high tower of the divine I am. I reside in the mansion of remembrance. I have no allegiance to the mask. I answer only to truth. I bow only to God. I am not who I was called. I am who truth calls me now. Old names no longer reach me. I walk in divine dominion. This path beneath my feet is not random. It is paved with intention, lit by intuition, and guarded by divine presence. I do not walk alone. I do not walk in circles. I walk as one who is guided. I do not beg life to make room for me. I declare my right place. I do not negotiate with fear. I decree truth. I do not dominate others. I govern appearances. I do not control people. I command my own thought, my own word, my own atmosphere. Every step I take is ordered. Every word spoken in faith is honored. Every desire aligned with divine law finds its right fulfillment. I am not a wanderer. I am a walker in divine dominion. The grave clothes are off. I will not carry yesterday's narrative into today's rising. I strip off the linen of limitation. I cast away the bandages of borrowed belief. I no longer smell of the tomb. I no longer look like the dead. I walk out fresh, whole, clean, clothed in power, draped in destiny. I do not need to explain my resurrection. I do not owe the past a final defense. The grave clothes are off. Let every accusation fall silent. Let every former role be burned. I have been called forth. I have been unbound. I have been loosed. I now walk not as the wounded one, but as the wonder of divine life. The grave clothes are off. I speak and I rise. It is as simple and as sacred as that. No striving, no forcing, no begging. I open my mouth in truth, and up I go. The lower law collapses. The former reality unravels. I speak from the throne, and all that is aligned with heaven moves to perform the word. I speak and I rise, higher than logic, higher than memory, higher than doubt, higher than every whispered curse. I speak and I rise, not because I am strong in myself, but because I am surrendered to truth. I speak and I rise, not because I earned it, but because I inherited it. I speak and I rise, not because of the ego, but because I am aligned with spirit. There is no more delay, no more permission to be granted, no more waiting room in the old identity. My soul has heard my mouth. The bones are moving. The tomb is shaking. The heavens are opening. I speak and I rise. Now lift your voice, lift your spine, lift your soul. This is not the hour of retreat. This is the hour of resurrection. Speak after me, not timidly, not analytically, not as one testing words from a distance, but as one who has seen the grave of the old self and dared to rise without it. I am not speaking to the version of you that keeps waiting. I am not speaking to the one rehearsing lack, delay, and explanation. I call forth the one who knows, the one who remembers, the one who dares to say, I am reason, I am released, I am returned to divine design. Let us walk together in rhythm now, for words spoken in sacred cadence strike the chains of the subconscious. They unlock the prison of inertia. They turn mourning into marching. Repeat within yourself. Feel each phrase move through your mouth into your body and across your timeline. Every phrase is a chisel. Every echo is a key. I release the self that fears. I rise in the self that knows. I release the self that delays. I rise in the self that declares. I release the self that clings. I rise in the self that circulates. I release the self that hides. I rise in the self that shines. I release the self that obeys fear. I rise in the self that commands. I release the self that pleads. I rise in the self that proclaims. I release the self that needs permission. I rise in the self that walks in dominion. I release the self that waits for signs. I rise in the self that is the sign. I release the self that apologizes for existing. I rise in the self that authorizes divine expression. I release the self that hoards. I rise in the self that multiplies. I release the self that is unsure. I rise in the self that is unshakable. I release the self that is tired. I rise in the self that is timeless in spirit. I release the self that doubts. I rise in the self that declares, this is the hour. This is the hour of resurrection. This is the hour of return. This is the hour of light. Let your very blood remember. Let your bones awaken. Let your mouth become the gate of your resurrection. The old you was buried beneath opinions, confusion, compromise, and delay. Yet the true self waits like a lion at the gate, not waiting to become worthy, but waiting to be spoken. You are not here to try. You are here to rise. Now continue the sacred exchange. I release the self that resists. I rise in the self that rejoices. I release the self that recoils. I rise in the self that reigns. I release the self that conforms. I rise in the self that creates. I release the self that complains. I rise in the self that commands the storm. I release the self that rehearses loss. I rise in the self that multiplies life. I release the self that obeys fear's voice. I rise in the self that knows only truth. I release the self that withers. I rise in the self that waters. I release the self that fears lack. I rise in the self that lives in the flow of divine supply. I release the self that bends before appearances. I rise in the self that builds by faith. I release the self that doubts divine timing. I rise in the self that knows divine timing is now active, now precise, now perfect. I release the self that dies daily by fear. I rise in the self that resurrects daily by the word. I release the self that fears the tomb. I rise in the self that rolls away the stone. And now we seal it not with passive belief, but with the fire of authority. Speak from the mountaintop. Speak from the garden. Speak from the furnace. Speak from the place in you that knows the word is law. Repeat 3 times. This is my hour. I bury the false. I rise in truth. This is my hour. I bury the false. I rise in truth. This is my hour. I bury the false. I rise in truth. Let no fear say it was not rebuked. Let no dream say it was not called forth. Let no old identity say it was not dismissed. The word has been spoken. The resurrection has begun. And it begins where it always begins, in the mouth of the awakened, the daring, the faithful, and the free. Now rise. The old self cannot wear the garments of glory. I once met a man crushed beneath the heavy garments of shame. He had spoken over himself again and again. I am weak. I always fail. I am not enough. And as surely as the farmer plants seed and reaps according to its kind, this man reaped the harvest of his own repeated declarations. His opportunities withered before they matured. His relationships reflected the rejection he expected. His money obeyed the sentence he spoke over it. His body carried the burden of his inward condemnation. He did not need more criticism. He needed a new word. So I said to him, "You have dressed yourself in sentences that do not belong to you. You have worn shame as a garment, but shame is not your robe. You must take it off with your mouth." He looked at me with weary eyes, and I told him to speak. I remove the garment of shame. I put on the garment of divine worth. I am not weak. I am strengthened by spirit. I do not always fail. I am guided into right action and right results. I am enough because divine life is enough in me. At first, the words felt strange to him. The old self resisted. The old record tried to play again. But he continued. Morning by morning, night by night, he spoke the new garment over himself. And slowly, something changed. Not by force, not by manipulation, not by the frantic effort of the ego, but by the quiet law of repeated truth. His shoulders lifted. His decisions became clearer. His speech became cleaner. He stopped apologizing for his existence. He began to act as one who had a right place in life. This is how the garment changes. First the word, then the atmosphere, then the action, then the demonstration. You cannot wait for the world to clothe you in honor. You must speak the robe of honor over yourself. You must declare the garment of praise where heaviness once lived. You must say, I am clothed in light. I am robed in divine dignity. I am dressed in order, peace, abundance, and right action. The old garments fall away, and the new life appears. Do not wear what fear made for you. Do not wear the opinions of those who never saw your truth. Do not wear the rags of your former name. The wardrobe of spirit is full. Put on faith, put on courage, put on divine supply, put on peace, put on the consciousness of one who is already guided and already loved. The old self cannot wear the garments of glory, so remove it and let the true self be clothed. There is a divine wardrobe prepared for the awakened soul, but the door to it opens through the word. You cannot say, I am worthless, and expect to feel crowned. You cannot say, nothing works for me, and expect the robe of victory to settle upon your shoulders. You cannot say, I am alone, and expect to feel the warmth of divine companionship. You must speak the garment before you feel it. You must claim the robe before the mirror agrees. You must dress consciousness first, and then life will arrange itself around the new attire. Sigh, I put on the garment of peace. I put on the garment of prosperity. I put on the garment of divine confidence. I put on the garment of love that cannot be rejected. I put on the garment of right place and perfect timing. When you go into your work, wear the garment of divine competence. When you handle money, wear the garment of inexhaustible supply. When you speak with others, wear the garment of love and poise. When you face uncertainty, wear the garment of guidance. When you rest at night, wear the garment of holy protection. The world can only respond to the consciousness you carry. If you carry fear, you will read fear into everything. If you carry shame, you will interpret neutral events as rejection. If you carry lack, even blessings may seem insufficient. But if you carry divine order, you will see pathways. If you carry abundance, you will recognize provision. If you carry faith, you will hear instruction. The garment is consciousness, and consciousness is clothed by speech. So every morning, before you clothe the body, clothe the soul. Sigh, I am dressed in divine order. I am clothed in right action. I am wrapped in protection. I am adorned with wisdom. I wear the robe of my true identity. Then move through the day as one who is already robed. Do not drag the hem of your garment through complaint. Do not stain it with resentment. Do not trade it for the old cloak of fear when the first challenge appears. Stand, speak, remember. The garment of glory belongs to the risen self, and the risen self is the one you now choose to be. Now we come to the deeper practice of spiritual speech. It is not enough to make one declaration and then spend the rest of the day contradicting it. It is not enough to say, I am supplied, and then tell 5 people how afraid you are of lack. It is not enough to say, I am guided, and then rehearse confusion as though confusion were holy. Your word must become consistent. A divided tongue creates a divided harvest. One sentence of faith, followed by 10 sentences of fear, does not establish dominion. It creates conflict in the field. It is like planting wheat and then pulling it up each hour to see whether it has grown. You must guard the seed. After you speak the word, protect it. Do not expose it to mockery. Do not dig it up with doubt. Do not water it with complaint. Let the word go forth and do its work in the invisible. When you declare divine order now opens my way, do not immediately say, but I do not see how. The how belongs to divine intelligence. Your task is to speak, trust, listen, and take right action when guided. Sigh, I do not need to know how. I am guided step by step. The way is made clear before me. Divine intelligence knows the path and reveals it in perfect order. This is practical mysticism. It is not passive. It is not fantasy. It is the most exacting discipline of the soul. You speak the word. You listen for intuition. You act when moved. You refuse to curse the interval between decree and demonstration. The interval is sacred. Do not fill it with fear. Fill it with thanksgiving. Gratitude multiplies good because gratitude agrees that good is already present. Gratitude is not the result of receiving. Gratitude is often the cause that opens the door to receiving. Before the answer appears, say thank you. Before the check arrives, say thank you. Before the relationship heals, say thank you. Before the body feels renewed, say thank you. Before the road is visible, say thank you that divine order is already preparing it. Sigh, I give thanks that the way is made. I give thanks that my good is now released. I give thanks that divine intelligence guides every step. I give thanks that what belongs to me by divine right cannot be withheld. This is the language of the risen one. The old self waits for proof. The new self gives thanks for the invisible before it becomes visible. And the invisible, blessed by faith, hastens into form. There is one final danger on the path of resurrection: the temptation to return to the old story because it feels familiar. Many people are more loyal to familiarity than to freedom. They say they want a new life, but they miss the old drama. They say they want peace, but they rehearse conflict. They say they want prosperity, but they keep the inner posture of poverty. They say they want love, but they remain armed against rejection. The old self is not always painful in a way the mind recognizes. Sometimes it feels safe because it is known. But known bondage is still bondage. Do not return to Egypt because the wilderness asks you to trust. Do not return to the tomb because the morning light feels too bright. Do not return to the old name because the new name requires courage. The risen life requires holy consistency. You must say no to what used to feed the false self. No to the conversations that keep you small. No to the complaints that make you feel important. No to the memories you polish for sympathy. No to the fear that asks to be consulted before every decision. No to the habit of calling delay reality and calling faith unrealistic. Faith is not unrealistic. Faith is the recognition of the higher reality before the lower eye can see it. The spiritual person is not foolish. The spiritual person is exact. They know that words become instructions, thoughts become atmospheres become actions, and actions become visible results. So do not go back. When the old self calls, answer with silence. When fear asks for a meeting, decline. When shame sends a message, return it unopened. When lack tries to explain itself as truth, say, "You are not my source. You are not my law. You are not my identity. I am supplied by divine substance. I am governed by divine order. I am led by divine intelligence." There is no need to hate the old self. It was a garment worn during sleep, but now you are awake. Remove the garment, Bless the lesson. Walk forward. The past has no power except the power your speech gives it. So give it none. Give your word to the future. Give your voice to faith. Give your agreement to divine order. And continue rising. Now, beloved listener, let this teaching become your practice. Do not merely admire the idea of resurrection. Live it in the small sentences of the day. When you wake, declare the old self buried. When you wash your face, speak to the mirror with faith. When you dress, clothe your soul in divine order. When you handle money, bless it and release fear. When you meet another person, speak from love, not from old rejection. When a delay appears, declare divine timing. When a door closes, declare divine direction. When fear rises, substitute it at once. Do not let fear finish a sentence. Interrupt it with truth. If fear says, "What if I fail?" Answer, "I am guided to right action and right results." If fear says, "There is not enough," answer, "Divine supply is limitless, and my good appears in perfect ways." If fear says, "I am alone," answer, "Infinite love surrounds me, guides me, and places me with the right people." If fear says, "It is too late," answer, "Divine timing restores, renews, and accelerates what belongs to me." If fear says, "I cannot change," answer, "I am already made new in spirit, and my outer life now conforms to the truth." This is the practice, not panic, not argument, not endless analysis. Substitution, fear out, faith in, old name out, divine name in, complaint out, thanksgiving in, confusion out, guidance in, lack out, supply in, delay out, divine order in. The practice is simple, but it requires devotion. It requires watchfulness. It requires refusing the luxury of careless speech. Your mouth is a gate. Do not leave it unguarded. Place faith at the entrance. Place wisdom at the entrance. Place gratitude at the entrance. Let only those words pass through which you would be willing to see made visible. Before you speak, ask, "Do I want this sentence to become form? Do I want this phrase to build my house? Do I want this word to dress my future? If not, do not speak it. Choose again. Speak life. Speak order. Speak abundance. Speak love. Speak peace. Speak the risen self into daily expression. Part 30. And now, as we draw this movement into completion, return to the first law. You cannot resurrect what you refuse to bury. The old self must be released. The false name must be dropped. The wound must no longer be worshipped. The story must no longer be carried as identity. The past must no longer be fed by the mouth that is meant to create the future. You are not here to repeat the grave. You are here to speak the morning. You are here to let divine intelligence guide you, divine love restore you, divine supply prosper you, divine order arrange your path, and the spoken word open the way before you. There is nothing weak about letting the old self die. It is the bravest act of the soul. It takes courage to stop calling yourself by the name of what hurt you. It takes courage to bless what has not yet appeared. It takes courage to speak abundance when the outer world still shows lack. It takes courage to speak love when rejection once wounded you. It takes courage to speak peace when the mind has been trained in war. But faith is courage in spiritual form. Faith says, "I will not wait for appearances to approve my word. I will speak what is true in spirit, and spirit will bring it forth in form. So now speak with me. I bury the old self. I release the false name. I withdraw my agreement from fear. I cancel every contract with lack, delay, shame, and defeat. I am guided by divine intelligence. I am supplied by divine substance. I am loved by infinite love. I am ordered by divine law. I speak the word of faith, and divine order now opens my way. Let this be the seal upon the teaching. Let it follow you into the morning. Let it meet you in the mirror. Let it stand beside you in the hour of decision. Let it speak through you when fear tries to speak as you. The old self is buried. The true self rises. The word has gone forth, and divine order is working now. If this message has awakened something in you, write this declaration in the comments and speak it aloud with faith. I speak the word of faith, and divine order now opens my way. Write it not as a wish. Write it as a decree. Speak it not as a hope. Speak it as the risen one. For the way is made clear. The tomb is empty. The garment is changed. The crown is waiting. And you rise now, in faith, in truth, and in divine order. And so it is.